about 800,000 direct jobs. These jobs are all across this country, not located in California or New York, but in virtually every state in the country. And so it's important as an economic engine that we really understand the value of this industry. And the good news that we're getting today in many ways is, of course, the fact that we have statistics that are now being developed that for the first time will include as part of the gross domestic product of our country the innovative industries and creative industries that are so important to our nation's well-being. And today you're going to hear from some of these mad scientists that Fred has talked about to be a part of our program. John Baptiste is going to be playing instruments, utilizing new technologies in music, and we'll even have artists that will be actually creating off to the right here in a screen. As we're having discussions, they'll be creating artistic productions that reflect the conversations that are occurring. So again, bringing technology and content together in this wonderful setting at the Corcoran Art Gallery. We want to thank them as well for hosting us here this morning. Eric, I'm deeply grateful to you for being here this morning to kick this off, to be part of this effort and conversation. I was talking earlier, Eric represents Culpeper, Virginia, which is the site of one of the Library of Congress, the preservation of film and television product, which is an exciting facility to have in the state of Virginia and for the country as well. So we're deeply honored that the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives have joined us as well. And we want to get right to it because we know there are busy schedules that people have this morning. So with that, I thank all of you for participating. Fred, I thank you. Rick, I thank you immensely as well. And let's begin the program. I want to have Michael Duffy, if he come up to the stage. He's the Washington Bureau Chief for Time Magazine and the Majority Leader. Give them a warm welcome, will you please?
Thank you, Chris. Welcome to Washington, everyone, where it's always one of two seasons, summer or pollen. I don't have to tell you which one we're in. Thank you, Eric, for joining us. Maybe the biggest debate that our country's had as a nation in all its 250 years is what role government should and shouldn't play, what it should do, what it shouldn't do. And this is a conference about creativity, and it immediately raises a question in my mind, which is, what business does government have in the creativity business at all? It's a wild and instinctive and singular business, creativity. It's something you do by yourself or you do it collectively. Is that, given the way government works and what we all know about it, why would we want government even anywhere near the C word?
Well, first of all, I agree with the sentiment that there is a desperate need of creativity here in Washington to try and figure out some of the very vexing problems that we're facing. But I really do believe in very much what was said earlier. Creativity is what sparked a revolution. The great minds of the 18th century that gave birth to this country. And so there is certainly, I think, a tradition of creativity in America. We are the creative capital of the world, and I believe it is the government's role really to provide a platform, if you will, for the growth of creativity. And it's about creating the conditions and the environment for creativity.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper on the platform and sketch it out in your view, what that would be, or what we need more of, what we maybe need less of, in order to foster this, keep this tradition going.
Well, generally when I talk about a platform, I bring my iPhone out. I know we're in Microsoft, but I want to just use this as an analogy. This is a platform. This is a platform where creative people can come and bring their wares, apply their skills, and create apps where it makes life work a lot easier for a lot of people in different areas. It takes information and puts it to work for the people and the users of these devices. That's what I believe that we can do here in Washington, too. This place is a treasure trove of information that's just, in many instances, sitting idle. Information that if we allow the innovative spirit of the private sector to be able to access that information, just think about the solutions that could come and quickly not getting bogged down by the bureaucracy in this town, but be able to solve some of the very tough issues, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the environment, energy, or the rest.
We recently asked Americans whether they feel that the need to be creative has increased as the economy has changed in the last generation or not. A vast majority said creativity matters more. We all have access to the technology. What specifically do you think drives Americans' view that this is becoming a more important force?
Well, I mean, just look at the kind of discoveries that have been going on in the last several years. I mean, just take bioscience, for instance. I mean, just the genomic studies and the miraculous, near miraculous discoveries that have taken place, that have produced cures for disease, that have increased the ability for people to live healthy lives. I think people understand that creativity is what America is about. Innovation is what we stand for. And frankly, if we can create that environment here in Washington through policy and allow the private sector to pursue that innovation, my bet is on America, because I know we take that innovation and bring it to market for the use of millions of people better than anybody else.
Okay, so if you could do one or two things, you could wave your magic wand, which I know none of us have, including you, and just make a couple of changes or mend a few things, what would you do specifically to enhance it?
To enhance creativity?
Yeah.
Well, I do think that access to information transparency is a huge step that we could take. And in essence, if we could hook hoses up to some of these dinosaur agencies and buildings in this town and allow the creativity to apply to all this data, I think we would be amazed at the solutions and innovations that could occur. I don't think there's any question that if you look at tax policy, regulatory policy, commitment on the part of the government to R&D, these are the kinds of things in specific I think would foster a new age of creativity in this country.
When you go around the country and talk to leaders both in states and in cities, is there a pattern of innovation that you've been particularly impressed with that hasn't reached Washington, something that you're seeing? I know as you meet people who are coming up in the party who represent both states and state legislatures, some kind of pattern of creativity that Washington lacks in the way it does its business?
Well, for instance, I'll give you two examples. One, I was with Governor Christie lately in New Jersey, and he talked about sort of the creativity at work right now in the area of disaster management. I mean, obviously New Jersey, New York has suffered tremendous damage from the storm. And there are plenty of folks out there, and I know there are volunteer organizations, there are charitable organizations like the Rubicon Project that went to work in Sandy relief and brought some incredible know-how in the tech area to map out what our coastal areas look like so that we don't have to spend so much time waiting to figure out after a disaster what's there. I think I'm headed to California this weekend. I can tell you that I know that the lieutenant governor there, former mayor of San Francisco, Gavin Newsom, has championed this sort of open government platform. And that is to allow for citizens in cities across this country to access information so that they can better help their communities solve problems. I just read about an example in Philadelphia. Whether it was a problem or a need, Philadelphia now has an app to go about finding where the urban art is in the city. Helps tourism, helps drive economic activity. These are the kinds of creative things that, although may not be, life-curing, right, it certainly adds the richness of all of us and could help us move forward.
I was thinking about that idea of hooking up the two hoses to federal agencies. These are two-way hoses, I'm hoping. Do you ever feel, given the huge access to data that we didn't have even a decade ago, do you ever feel like you're drowning? Just you, Eric.
Oh, listen, I mean, how many devices do we all have clipped on our belts and our pockets? The tablets we're carrying. It is pretty unbelievable the amount of information that confronts us. And I think that we see this on Capitol Hill too. It's hard to sort of discern what's the real value add.
Right.
And you just got to get better at sifting through information. And I do think that potentially there could be new careers based on sort of analytics and those who can quickly analyze large amounts of information. And obviously the software writers are way ahead of us on that.
And is there some app that you know about that I can download everything that my 16-year-old knows about this particular problem that I can't seem to understand? Or have you found one that works?
Oh, I got teenagers too. I can. Yeah, it's. But that's. I think you make a good point, though. I mean, the students that are coming along now in school. I mean, they are desensitized, if you will, to this onslaught, almost assault of information, and are able to find their way. But I think the striking piece is the connectivity that comes from all these new avenues of being able to communicate. And it is just unbelievable, the virtual connectivity that our kids now enjoy.
And do you have that with other members of your party? Are you guys like much more linked in than you were a decade ago? Do you find that you are communicating faster, better, smarter?
There's no question. I mean, you just take from Twitter to Facebook to all the sort of instant messaging, whether it's pinning, whether it's texting, and we've also in the Majority Leader's office announced a project called Citizens Co-Sponsor. And what this is a tool to connect to the voters and the citizens of the country to open up, if you will, the database of legislation and policy that is underway on Capitol Hill. Again, a two-way street to foster a dialogue and communication.
This was an interesting question for me, which is, both parties at the moment have a teensy-weensy problem with orthodoxy. And so what can the leaders of both parties do or trying to do to help make all members who are voting on things keep the perfect from being the enemy of the good?
Well, I sort of, this doesn't necessarily always fit in the conversation of technology and the newest thing, because I think that it goes back to a tried and tested principle. And that is something that I've practiced in my marriage for over 23 years, and that is you agree that you're not going to agree on everything, right? And there are a lot of things my wife Diana and I don't agree on, but there's many more things we do agree on. So that tried and tested principle of saying, hey, we're going to raise a family together, which means we better emphasize and prioritize those things that we can agree on. We've got 3 kids, raise these kids, now empty nesters, but that's, I think, the principle we need to begin to practice here. We know there's plenty of disagreement in this town, starting with taxes and health care, right, and all the other issues. But there are plenty of areas we can agree on. I mean, look, we're here with Time Magazine. I just wrote a piece on Joe Biden in the list of 100 most important people in the country
You
of the world.
call him a bridge builder.
Right. He's a perfect example, right? Is somebody who says, look, obviously he and I are going to disagree a lot on a lot of things, but we have a relationship that's been built on a sensitivity about the differences and really work hard to find common ground. Just 2 days ago in the House is another example. I attended the Freedom March pilgrimage to Selma and Montgomery, Alabama in March. And it was hosted by the Congressional Black Caucus. It was a bipartisan trip. Out of that came legislation to award the gold medal to the 4 little girls who died at 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham during the civil rights struggle. And because Terry Sewell, the member of Congress from Montgomery, she and Spencer Backus on the Republican side got together, and we all supported this effort along with John Lewis, who is a civil rights hero, and said this is something worthy of our attention, setting aside the differences, coming together so we could all dedicate ourselves to the kind of struggle that existed back then and continue the effort to make this country one of opportunity for all.
Is there any source of creativity, man-made, machine-assisted, or middle of the night magical that we can bring to bear, you can bring to bear, to produce a budget deal this year?
I think that's,
That you could support and the president would sign.
well, there's certainly, I think.
And be creative.
Well, that would be a prerequisite in this conversation. Yes. You know, look, we're working on trying to create the conditions again. We unfortunately in this town, the extremes, the hyperbole tends to have a lot of influence, and it causes increased, heightened expectations, leaving a lot of room for disappointment, and frankly has, I believe, zapped some of the confidence in all of us in being able to work together. And I'm trying hard to say, look, we've got to go back and start practicing how to win together. And it may not be, the Hail Mary pass that we can win together on first. Let's try some incremental steps, getting used to working together. And I think that it's been too long in this town that has not been the case.
Last question, I'm going to put you on the spot just as a follow-up, and it's if you and the Republicans in Congress, Democrats in Congress and the White House have taken about $3 trillion off the federal balance sheet through a variety of creative means over the last 24 months, very fast. It's not about half of what Simpson and Bowles proposed. If there's a chance at a next bite, could you get another $1 trillion?
I think there's certainly ways for us to try and focus on how we begin to manage down the debt and deficit through spending reduction and reforms. And I think it's also incumbent upon us to see how we can spark growth in the economy, and it starts right here with creativity. Again, it is the engine that drives so much now. And so yes, I think we can.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much. Coming up next, my colleague Nancy Gibbs will host Walter Isaacson, Ted Leonsis, and Hardy Pajori to talk about innovation, invention, and inspiration. So stay tuned. Thank you.